as real. They fall into the way of thinking where obtains the dualism of qualifying and qualified. O Lord of Lanka, this is what leads to various excellent attainments, this is what makes one aware of the inmost attainment, this is the Mahayana realization. He will accomplish and acquire a superior state of existence. O Lord of Lanka, by entering upon the Mahayana discipline the veils of ignorance are destroyed and one turns away from the manifold waves of mentation and falls not into the refuge and practice of the philosophers. O Lord of Lanka, the philosophers' practice starts from their own egotistic attachments. Their ugly practice arises from their adhering to the dualistic views concerning the self-nature of the Vahayana. Well done, O Lord of Lanka! Reflect on the signification of this as you did when seeing the Tathagata before. For this, indeed, is seeing the Tathagata. At that time it occurred to Ravijana. I wish to see the Blessed One again, who has all the disciplinary practices. At his command, who has turned away from the practices of the philosophers, who is born of the state of realization in the inmost consciousness, and who is beyond the dualism of the transformed and the transforming. He is the knowledge realized by the practicers. He is the realization attained by those who are enjoying the perfect bliss of the samadhi when there takes place an intuitive understanding which comes through meditation. Therefore, he is known as a great adept in the mental discipline. May I see thus again the compassionate one by means of his miraculous powers in whom the fuel of passion and discrimination are destroyed. Who is surrounded by sons of the Buddha? Who has penetrated into the minds and thoughts of all beings, who moves about everywhere, who knows everything, who keeps himself away from works and forms. Seeing him may I attain what I have not yet attained. Retain what I have already gained. May I conduct myself with non-discrimination, abide in the joy of samadhi and samapati, and attain to the ground where the Tathagatas walk, and in these make progress. At that moment, the Blessed One recognizing that the Lord of Lanka is to attain the Anutpadakadharmakshanti showed his glorious compassion for the ten-headed one by making himself visible once more on the mountain peak studded with many jewels and enveloped in a network of jewels. The ten-headed king of Lanka saw the splendor again as seen before on the mountain peak. He saw the Tathagata, who was the Arhat and the fully enlightened one, with the 32 marks of excellence beautifully adorning his person, and also saw himself on each mountain peak, together with Mahamedi. In front of the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, putting forward his discourse on the realization experienced by the Tathagata in his imnost self, and, surrounded by the yakshas, conversing on the literary teaching, recitation and story of Buddhism and those Buddha lands were seen with the leaders. Then the Blessed One, beholding again this great assembly with his wisdom eye, which is not the human eye, laughed loudly and most vigorously like the Lion King, emitting rays of light from the tuft of hair between the eyebrows, from the ribs, from the loins, from the Srivatsa on the breast, and from every pore of the skin, emitting rays of light which shone flaming like the fire taking place at the end of a kalpa, like a luminous rainbow, like the rising sun, blazing brilliantly, gloriously, which were observed from the sky by Sakra, Brahman, and the guardians of the world, the one who sat on the peak of Lanka. Vyango with Mount Sumeru laughed the loudest laugh. At that time the assembly of the Bodhisattvas together with Sakra and Brahman, each thought within himself. For what reason, I wonder, from what cause does the Blessed One who is the master of all the world, after smiling first one laugh the loudest laugh? Why does he emit rays of light from his own body? Why, emitting rays of light? OES he remained silent, with the realization of the truth in his inmost self, and absorbed deeply and showing no surprise in the bliss of samadhi, and reviewing the 10 quarters, looking around like the Lion King, and thinking only of the discipline, attainment and performance of Ravana. At that time, Mahamedi the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who was previously requested by Ravana to ask the Buddha concerning his self-realization. Feeling pity on him, and knowing the minds and thoughts of the assembly of the Bodhisattvas, and observing that beings to be born in the future would be confused in their minds because of their delight in the wordy teaching, because of their clinging to the letter S, fully in accordance with the spirit, because of their clinging to the disciplinary powers of the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, which might lead them to think how it were that the Tathagatas, the Blessed Ones, even in their transcendental state of consciousness, should burst out into loudest laughter. Mahamati, the Bodhisattva, asked the Buddha in order to put a stop to their inquisitiveness the following question. For what reason, for what cause did this laughter take place? Said the Blessed One. Well done, O Mahamati. Well done, indeed, for once more, O Mahamati. Viewing the world as it is in itself and wishing to enlighten the people in the world who have fallen into a wrong view of things in the 3 periods of time, thou undertakest to ask me the question. Thus should it be with the wise men who want to ask questions for both themselves and others. Ravana, Lord of Lanka, O Mahamati, asked a twofold question of the Tathagatas of the past who are Arhats and perfect Buddhas. And he wishes now to ask me too a twofold question in order to have its distinction, attainment, and scope ascertained. This is what is never tasted by those who practice the meditations of the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers. And the same will be asked by the question-loving 10-headed one of the Buddhas to come. Knowing that, the Blessed One said to the Lord of Lanka, thus: Ask, O thou, Lord of Lanka. The Tathagata has given thee permission to ask. Delay not, whatever questions thou desirest to have answered, I will answer each of them with judgment to the satisfaction of thy heart, keeping thy seat of thought free from false discrimination. Observe well what is to be subdued at each stage. Ponder things with wisdom, seeing into the nature of the inner principle in thyself. Abide in the bliss of samadhi. Embraced by the Buddhas in samadhi, abide in the bliss of tranquilization. Going behind the samadhi and understanding attained by the Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, abide in the attainment of the Bodhisattvas. In the stages of Akala, Saddhamati, and Dharmamagga, grasp well the egolessness of all things in its true significance. Be anointed by the Buddhas with the water of samadhi at the great palace of lotus jewels. Surrounded by the Bodhisattvas who are sitting on lotuses of various sorts, each supported by the gracious power of the Buddhas, thou wilt find thyself sitting on a lotus and each one of the Bodhisattvas looking at thee face to face. This is a realm beyond imagination. Thou shouldst plan out an adequate plan and establish thyself at a stage of discipline by planning out such a plan as would include all kinds of skillful means, so that thou comest to realize that realm which is beyond imagination. And then thou wilt attain the stage of Tathagatahood in which one is able to manifest oneself in various forms, and which is something never seen before by the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, philosophers, Brahman, Indra, Upendra, and others. At that moment the Lord of Lanka, being permitted by the Blessed One, rose from his seat on the peak of the jewel mountain which shone like the jewel lotus, immaculate and glowing in splendor. He was surrounded by a company of celestial maidens of all kinds. Garlands, flowers, perfumes, incense, unguents, umbrellas, banners, flags, necklaces, half-necklaces, diadems, tiaras, all in every possible variety, and other ornaments too whose splendor and excellence were never heard of or seen before, were created. Music was played surpassing anything that could be had by the gods, Nagas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Mahoragas, and human beings. Musical instruments were created equal to anything that could be had in all the world of desire, and also such superior musical instruments were created as were to be seen in the Buddha lands. The Blessed One and the Bodhisattvas were enveloped in a net of jewels. A variety of dresses and high banners were raised high up in the air, as high as 7 talanga trees, to greet the Buddha, showering great clouds of offerings, playing music which resounded all around, and then descending from the air. The Lord of Lataka sat down on the peak of the jewel mountain ornamented with magnificent jewel lotus whose splendor was second only to the sun and lightning. Sitting he made courtesy, smiling first to the Blessed One for his permission, and proposed to him a twofold question. It was asked of the Tathagatas of the past, who were Arhats, fully enlightened ones, and it was solved by them. O Blessed One, now I ask of thee. The request will certainly be complied with by thee as it was by the Buddhas of the past. In verbal teaching, O Blessed One, duality was discoursed upon by the transformed Tathagatas and Tathagatas of transformation, but not by the Tathagatas of silence. The Tathagatas of silence are absorbed in the blissful state of samadhi, they do not discriminate concerning this state, nor do they discourse on it. O Blessed One, thou assuredly will discourse on this subject of duality. Thou art thyself a master of all things, an Arhat, a Tathagata. The sons of the Buddha and myself are anxious to listen to it. The Blessed One said, O Lord of Lanka, tell me what you mean by duality. The Lord of the Rakshasas, who was renewed in his ornaments, full of splendor and beauty, with a diadem, bracelet, and necklace strung with hydra thread, said, it is said that even dharmas are to be abandoned, and how much more adharmas. O Blessed One, why does this dualism exist that we are called to abandon? What are adharmas? And what are dharmas? How can there be a duality of things to abandon? Does not duality arise from falling into discrimination, from discriminating self-substance where there is none, from the idea of things created and uncreated, because the non-differentiating nature of the alaya-vijnana is not recognized? Like the seeing of a hair circle as really existing in the air. The notion of dualism belongs to the realm of intellection not exhaustively purified. This being the case as it should be, how could there be any abandonment of dharmas and adharmas? Why? Said the Blessed One. O Lord of Lanka, seest thou not that the differentiation of things, such as is perceived in jars and other breakable objects whose nature it is to perish in time, takes place in a realm of discrimination, cherished by the ignorant? This being so, is it not to be so understood? It is due to discrimination, cherished by the ignorant, that there exists the differentiation of dharma and adharma. Supreme wisdom, however, is not to be realized by seeing things this way. O Lord of Lanka, let it be so with the ignorant who follow the particularized aspect of existence that there are such objects as jars, etc. But it is not so with the wise. One flame of uniform nature rises up depending on houses, mansions, parks, and terraces, and burns them down, while a difference in the flames is seen according to the power of ch burning material, which varies in length, magnitude, etc. This being so, why is it not to be so understood? The duality of dharma and adharma thus comes into existence. Not only is there seen a fire flame spreading out in one continuity and yet showing a variety of flames, but from one seed, O Lord Olanka, are produced, also in one continuity, stems, shoots, knots, leaves, petals, flowers, fruit, branches, all individualized. As it is with every externa object from which grow a variety of objects, so also with internal objects. From ignorance there develop the skandhas, datas, ayatanas, with all kinds of objects accompanying, which grow out in the triple world where we have, as we see, happiness, form, speech, and behavior, each differentiating infinitely. The oneness of the Vajnana is grasped variously according to the evolution of an objective world. Thus there are things seen inferior, superior, or middling, things defiled or free from defilement, things good or bad. Not only, O Lord of Lanka, is there such a difference of conditions and things generally. There is also seen a variety of realizations attained inwardly by each religious practicer as he treads the path of discipline which constitutes his practice. How much more difference in dharma and adharma do we not see in a world of particulars which is evolved by discrimination? Indeed, we do. O Lord of Lanka, the differentiation of dharma and adharma comes from discrimination. O Lord of Lanka, what are dharmas? That is, they are discriminated by the discriminations cherished by the philosophers, Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and ignorant people. They think that the dharmas headed by Gula and Dravya are produced by causes. These are the notions to be abandoned. Such are not to be regarded as real, because they are appearances. It comes from a man's clinging to appearances, that the manifestations of his own mind are regarded as reality. Such things as jars, etc., are products of discrimination conceived by the ignorant. They exist not. Their substances are not attainable. The viewing of things from this viewpoint is known as their abandonment. What, then, are adharmas? O Lord of Lanka, what we call dharmas are not attainable, they are not appearances born of discrimination, they are above causality. There is in them no such dualistic happening as is seen as reality and non-reality. This is known as the abandoning of dharmas. What again is meant by the unattainability of dharmas? That is, it is like horns of a hare, or ass, or camel, or horse, or a child conceived by a barren woman. They are dharmas the nature of which is unattainable. They are not to be thought of as real, because they are appearances. They are only talked about in popular parlance if they have any sense at all. They are not to be adhered to as in the case of jars, etc. As these unrealities are to be abandoned as not comprehensible by the mind, so are things of discrimination also to be abandoned. This is called the abandoning of dharmas and adharmas. O Lord of Lanka, one your questioning as to the how of abandoning dharmas and adharmas is hereby answered. O Lord of Lanka, thou sayest again that thou hast asked this question of the Tathagatas of the past who were arhats and fully enlightened ones, and that it was solved by them. O Lord of Lanka, that which is spoken of as the past belongs to discrimination. As the past is thus a discriminated idea, even so are the ideas of the future and the present. Because of reality the Tathagatas do not discriminate, they go beyond discrimination and futile reasoning. They do not follow the individuation aspect of forms, except when reality is disclosed for the edification of the unknowing and for the sake of their happiness. It is by prajna that the Tathagata performs deeds transcending forms. Therefore, what constitutes the Tathagatas in essence as well as in body is wisdom. They do not discriminate, nor are they discriminated. Wherefore do they not discriminate in the manas? Because discrimination is of the self, of soul, of personality. How do they not discriminate in the manovijnana? The manovijnana is meant for the objective world where causality prevails as referred to forms, appearances, conditions, and figures. Therefore, discrimination and non-discrimination must be transcended. O Lord of Lanka, that which comes out in manifestation is like a figure inlaid in a wall, it has no sensibility or consciousness. O Lord of Lanka, all that is in the world is devoid of work and action because all things have no reality, and there is nothing heard, nothing hearing. O Lord of Lanka, all that is in the world is like an image magically transformed. This is not comprehended by the philosophers and the ignorant. O Lord of Lanka, he who thus sees things is the one who sees truthfully. Those who see things otherwise walk in discrimination. As they depend on discrimination, they cling to dualism. Lt is like seeing one's own image reflected in a mirror, or one's own shadow in the water, or in the moon light, or seeing one's shadow in the house, or hearing an echo in the valley. People grasping their own shadows of discrimination uphold the discrimination of dharma and adharma. And, failing to carry out the abandonment of the dualism, they go on discriminating and never attain tranquility. By tranquility is meant oneness. And oneness gives birth to the highest samadhi, which is gained by entering into the womb of Tathagatahud, which is the realm of supreme wisdom realized in one's inmost self.